Bitcoin is slightly down this morning. To say it again, yes, it's holding the center line I gave you. That's great. I still don't like how the prices are moving though. You should know that the SP perfectly made up for the losses it had the day before yesterday. We were down 1% on Monday, 2% on Tuesday, and then we were up 1% on Wednesday. That's a 1% drop or rise. But Bitcoin has lost money over the last 3 days, right? That's right, Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday. You don't want to see that. You should be pretty high on Bitcoin if it was against other Bitcoin users, right? So that's not going to happen. When I look at the theory behind that, it tells me that the Bitcoin price or the crypto price is a little weak. Just so you know, it's okay as long as the pivot line stays in place. But I think the bigger drop will happen if it breaks here. That's where goal support number one is. Bitcoin is popular because it is easy to understand. There's no limit to who can join, no matter how much they know about crypto or how new they are to it. Guess who is watching us now? Robert Kiyosaki is the author of the best-selling book Rich Dad Poor Dad. We'd also like to thank everyone who put their trust in us. We read all of your comments and the best part is that it's free. If you sign up now, you'll get all the new information for free. Stay ahead of the trends instead of just following them. Sign up for Bitcoin Bubble right now and enjoy the new age. Let's talk about these things and more in this film. If we look at the spiders, which is the SP500 before the market opens, we can see that we were down a little at 4 a.m. and have since come back up. We also closed yesterday. It looks like we closed yesterday around this area. No, let's look at that right now. We are a little bit lower than we were in the morning practice. Not a lot of business news today. The big number, the CPI, comes out tomorrow. Then on Friday morning, we have JP Morgan's earnings. Remember that the most important thing about JP Morgan is not so much the results as what Jamie Dimon says about the economy. What does he see about running a bank at JP Morgan? Let's look at this chart before Friday's reports. Here are a few things I notice. Right away, I see that there's a beautiful similarity. So if this line breaks, JP Morgan stock goes through a lot of trouble. A big move to the downside is something you might see. It could float back up as long as this holds. But this formation is where I have a little bit of worry. We call this a head and shoulder position. Once more, for those of you who know basic technical analysis patterns, we just want to keep an eye on this pattern setup. The same thing applies here. If this line breaks, it starts right. The head and shoulders would set off. The important thing to know about a head and shoulders pattern is that you can use a measured move to figure out the downside goal. You basically start at the top of the head and drop the straight line down to the neckline. This is called the neckline. Then you measure the distance between the breakpoint and the high point of the head. The breakpoint could be over here, or over here. But every time it breaks, that's another bad thing. And that gives you your final goal for going down. As it stands, that would bring us down to around 178, 177, or 180, somewhere in that range. Now, if that does happen, it will be very, very interesting to see where the stock market is in the end. But I want to add that there isn't a break yet. The break is important. If not, what I did just doesn't matter at all. Let's say we just float back up here and go back to the high end, that is resistance, but it also rules out a head and shoulder pattern because the shoulder can't be higher than the head. This is a good technical study of TA. This is something you need to know. Of course, I teach them in the Winning Trader series. However, these small differences are what separate buyers and investors who make a lot of money from those who don't. Okay, again, that's something to keep an eye on here. Going back to the SP500, I'm still keeping an eye on this area. This is the high point you reached before, around $574.65 to $574.50. We can keep going to $6,000 if we get above this point. That's kind of my point. Once we get rid of this doji high, you'll probably like a $6,000 SP500 picture. Yes. To be fair, that's not that much higher up. On this chart, that would be about 600 on the spiders, which would add 4.5% to our gain. It's not a big move. This is something else I wanted to show you, right? Here is the SP itself. Next, I'll show you another way to figure out an SP500 goal. We look at this and ask ourselves, okay, what kinds of moves have we had? We are now going to look at the weekly chart because it gives us a better view. And let me zoom in. Take your measured movement from your bull market move from the COVID low to the high of the bull market in 2021. This is what you want to do every week. Okay, we use this distance to figure out how far it is. We can see that it's about 2,600 points on the SP 500. The idea behind a measured move is that once this distance has been reached, we all have a natural urge to sell or take gains, which is another way of saying that the move is over. In this case, a controlled move would mean that we move this far, right? We'll now turn it to the low point of the bear market. That's it. This was the bottom of your weak market in 2022. What we do next is add that distance to this SP 500. And when we do that, we can see that our goal for a slow move would be around 6,100. In other words, there are a number of things between 6,000 and 6,100 that allow the SP 500 to go up as much as possible. Bitcoin is staying around $62,000 as traders wait for important US economic reports that could change the direction of the market. Bitcoin hasn't gone up or down much, and it has tested $62,000 several times as buyers wait for the Federal Reserve meeting minutes to come out on October 9th. Later this week, inflation data such as CPI and PPI and jobless data could cause a lot of change. Analysts think that GDP estimates and the Fed's favorite inflation measure, PCE, will have a big effect at the end of October. The Coinbase premium, which shows how much demand there is in the US, has gone down, which means that US buyers are less interested in the current price action. This week, macroeconomic data in US. Demand will be very important for Bitcoin. What happens next will rest on how these things play out. Oil prices are going down again. Once more, good job. You and I are both short on the commodity service, smart money, commodities, and mining. We're both right on that. You already know how I feel about oil though. Yesterday I said it. I still want oil to be $50 or less by 2025. It could still go up if something happens in the Middle East. But that's still a level to keep an eye on. Since the price of natural gas is going down, we are still in the money on it and will continue to be so. It's also short, so things are going really, really well. So good for you if you join me and are again in the commodity business. Gold is another 2-for-1 play in my stock service. It's part of smart money stocks and ETF. So beating it up there. Let's quickly look at gold today if we go with gold. Gold is moving away. Don't forget that I talked about my 2660 goal. We got that. We are now moving back. I know what my range is and I'll show you that there are a lot of big support lines here. In this case, this would be the first support for gold at 25.25. Right here at 24.75, this would be the second support. This is your choice then. I think the price will come back in and trade back into that level at some point. It could end at the high end or the low end. I would still expect it to be somewhere in that area though. Okay, let's talk about silver quickly. After that, we'll talk about Bitcoin. Today, silver is still falling. I still have the goal I've been showing you for the past 2 weeks. I told you guys to pull back to this zone even when silver was up here, and it's slowly getting there. It gets close to that zone